Hey, there is this new theme. There's this new talking point that has surfaced when public figures are asked about their vaccination status, where they say, that's my HIPAA. That's my HIPAA, or that's HIPAA. We're going to talk about the absurdity of this. I've actually mentioned this 3 or 4 times over the last 2 months when it would sort of rear its not ugly head, but very ignorant head and explain HIPAA has nothing to do with journalists talking to public figures. It just doesn't. That you look up the law, look at what HIPAA is. But it's now becoming a very common refrain for people who just don't want to answer whether they've been vaccinated. So let's look at some examples. Here is radical Republican Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene. She has done anti-vax stuff. She has done compare things to the Holocaust stuff, which she then apologized for, but then did it again. This is one of the most radical, ignorant, unhinged members of Congress. She invoked her HIPAA rights. I know. She was asked, are you vaccinated, by a reporter? And she said, that's a violation of my HIPAA. Okay, take a look.
2 questions. Have you yourself gotten vaccinated, and do you disagree with the Republican whip?
Well, your first question is a violation of my HIPAA rights. You see, with HIPAA rights, we don't have to reveal our medical records, and that also involves our vaccine records.
So she clearly doesn't understand, or is pretending not to understand, what HIPAA is. Here's another example. Dallas Cowboys quarterback Dak Prescott asked, are you vaccinated? And he said that that's HIPAA. Hold on. Is being asked that HIPAA, or is answering it? What does it mean? That's HIPAA. It makes no sense, but let's take a look at the video.
Have you gotten the vaccine?
I don't necessarily think that's exactly important, Clarence. I think that's HIPAA. But I understand where Zeke comes from. I understand everybody's opinion. And I think everybody's has that right.
My HIPAA, HIPAA this, HIPAA that. I would even go further, guys. I think being asked about vaccination violates the Nuremberg codes. It violates the Geneva Convention. It violates everything. Penal code. I mean, just throw any misused legal term out. It violates all of it. And the funniest little detail is 90% of the time they're misspelling HIPAA. If you look through our YouTube channel comments, which I don't encourage you to do on an empty stomach if you're planning to eat soon, because it's going to really spoil your appetite. 90% of the time, the people talking about HIPAA in the context of being asked about vaccinations spell it like hippo, but with an A. It's HIPAA, H-I-P-A-A. It stands for Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. Now, to be really crystal clear, HIPAA relates only to the storage and the transmission of your medical records by medical providers and by insurance companies. When you ask someone about their COVID vaccine status, it's not even to say it's a HIPAA violation. It has nothing to do with HIPAA. And especially when a journalist asks a public figure, are you vaccinated? It has nothing to do with HIPAA. HIPAA was signed into law by Bill Clinton in 1996. What was happening in 96? Medical records were in the process of being computerized. And what HIPAA doesn't block anyone from asking questions about health status. What it does is prohibit certain healthcare entities from revealing your health information. That's all it does. And it shouldn't surprise us in a sense. So I tweeted over the weekend. Initially, I tweeted over the weekend the stupidity of claiming HIPAA violations when journalists ask public figures about their vaccination status is actually even taking me by surprise. But then I thought about it a little more, and I realized what I tweeted out the next day. It's not surprising that the same people who think Twitter is violating their First Amendment rights think that a journalist is violating HIPAA. Don't let them get away with this. And I think that there's basically 2 things that should be done when these people try to assert their HIPAA rights, which is, it's crazy. It's sort of like I'm asserting the laws of gravity. Really? Well, what does it mean to assert them? You're bound by them regardless. It just makes no sense. Okay. I think that there's 2 things that should be said. One is, what is HIPAA? Explain what HIPAA does and how it relates to the question you were asked. It has to be done. And it's going to be like when people say that's socialism. And we say, what is socialism anyway? They don't know. Okay. Ask, what is HIPAA? But then more importantly, once you've established that they don't even know, go further and say, hey, regardless of whether this is HIPAA, why is it you don't want to reveal your vaccination status? Because I'm not hearing that question being asked. And that's really the key question. That's not a trivial thing. Whether or not someone can be forced to reveal their vaccination status or whether a question violates HIPAA, I mean, none of it makes any sense. At a certain point, when it's a public figure, the next question should be, okay, listen, let's not debate HIPAA. What I want to know is, why are you so interested in keeping secret your vaccination status? Is it because you're worried that the people that have heard you do the anti-vax stuff and love you for it and donate to you for it are all of a sudden going to abandon you if they realize actually you've been vaccinated? Is it because you've not been vaccinated and you want to hide that? My instinct is, for the most part, the people who don't want to acknowledge their vaccination status publicly are right-wingers who have toyed with anti-vax. So my instinct is they've probably mostly been vaccinated and think it would be damaging to the brand or would appear hypocritical to admit that they've received a vaccination. That's my instinct. I'd love to hear from you about it. One of our sponsors is SteadyMD Primary Care, the easier and more affordable way to do primary care. And they're giving you 50% off because you are in my audience. You just answer a few questions. SteadyMD will match you with a licensed primary care physician that's tailored to your needs. You'll have a 1-hour virtual appointment and start a meaningful relationship with your new doctor. And from then on, your doctor will be available to you by text, phone, and video chat. It's not some random doctor on call. Your SteadyMD doctor has a limited number of patients. You get the attention you deserve, and they can help you with anything your primary care doc normally would. It's very cool how it works. You don't need insurance. It's just $99 a month, no other fees or copays for visits. Take the free quiz and see which doctor is a perfect fit for you. You'll get 50% off your first month when you go to steadymd.com/Pacman. No risk, no long-term commitment. The link is right underneath the video.